everyone, and welcome back. In the last chapter, we learned about how people became farmers, how they became herders, and many more things on the top. Now we're going to look at domestication. Domestication is the name given to the process in which people grow plants and look after animals. Basically, this whole context states that domestication is animals really evolving to how they're treated. So if look at this is a pig's teeth. Can you tell that this teeth belongs to a wild pig rather than this teeth to a domesticated one? That's basically because of ovulation. Anyways, yeah, so they evolved and stuff. So my tongue got twisted back then, but okay. So they really evolved, evolved to their habitat where they lived. So this domesticated pig was really, really happy and they were chill and they didn't have to hunt or they didn't have to bite on things to hunt, while a wilder pig had to go for a search and they had to like really bite their prey and stuff. So that's also one thing. For example, they select those plants and animals that are not prone to disease. So this is how people really look at plants and animals. They don't like to go near animals that can be dangerous to us. That's why the dog was kind of like the first one to be tamed, and plants that are not prone to disease. They also select plants that yield the large size grain, so they wanted large size grain so they can have strong stalks capable of bearing the weight of the ripe grain. So they really looked after their plants, and seed from selected plants are preserved in sown to ensure that new plants and seeds will have the same qualities. Amongst animals, yep, we just covered that. Look at these two sets of teeth, basically. Domestication was a gradual process that took place in many parts of the world. It began about 12,000 years ago, as I said before. Virtually all the plant and animal produce that we use as food today is a result of domestication. Some of the earliest domesticated were the wheat and barley, as we have said many, many times. The earliest domesticated animals include goat and sheep. So domestication and really tamed is different things. So keep that in mind. They are two different things. And you will apply. If you plant a seed, you will notice that it takes some time to grow. This may be for several days, weeks, months, or in some cases, years. When people began growing plants, it meant that they had to stay in the same place for a long time, looking after the plants, watering, weeding, driving away animals and birds till the grain ripened. And then the grain had to be used carefully. Ways in which grain was used as seed, as food, as gifts, or stored for food. Really, that's the same thing as food and stored for food. As grain had to be stored for both food and seed, people had to think of ways of storing it. As you can see, they're really gathering it, so you get an idea why they were called hunters and gatherers. Maybe right now we are only called gatherers because sometimes in lockdown you gather up the food so you don't have to go outside. That kind of gathering. So yeah. In many areas they began making large clay pots or wove baskets or dug pits into the ground. Do you think hunter-gatherers would have made and used pots? Give some reasons for your examples. So they might have used pots to store food. So that really gives a nice explanation to that. Storing animals. Animals multiply naturally. Besides, if they're looked after carefully, they provide milk, which is an important source of food and meat, whenever required. In other words, animals that are reared can be used as a store of food. Apart from food, what are the other things that could have been obtained from animals? What are animals used for today? There used to be pets, there used to be They're used as transports before. They're still kind of used in transport, you can say, but horses are horse riding, yes. And uh, sometimes you use the energy of the animals to work in farms and stuff, so that's some kinds of things that they're looking after. Finding out about the first farm is in Hades. Turn to map 2, page 13. You will notice a number of blue squares. So that's the Neolithic things that we are talking about. Oh my gosh, we have done so much. Neolithic sites. So Payanpali, Halur, um, Mahagra, Chiran, Kodiva, Burzahum, Megar, um, Daujali, Hading, all of those kinds of things are Neolithic sites. Yeah. You will notice a number of blue squares. Each marks a site from where archaeologists have found evidence of early farming and herders. So Neolithic site, or maybe you remember the Neolithic stage or the age. Neolithic might be from 10,000 years ago to present. Maybe not present, or maybe 200 years ago, or 400 years ago, 500 years ago. We don't know. You can search that up and maybe inquire a bit more about it. But let's continue. These are all found over the subcontinent. Some of the most important ones are in the northwest, in present-day Kashmir, in east-south India. In Kashmir, there should be some thing, and you can look back at the map. Actually, I will do that as well because I'm really interested in this. So Burzahum is in Kashmir, so maybe they're talking about Burza, right? Slow down. Scientists study evidence of plants and animal bones. One of the most important exciting finds include remains of burnt grain. This may be burnt accidentally or on purpose. Burnt grain might mean that they are starting to cook food, like how we cook in today. We cook paneer, we cook potato, all of those things. We cook wheat to make pizza or bread, right? Okay, scientists can identify these grains, and so we know that a number of crops were grown in different parts of the subcontinent. They can also identify the bones of different animals. Now, you might have a wondering from a long time, how do they know the period of time they were from? They can know from how old the seed looks, and they've got like special machines for that. They can look under the microscopes on what's also how on what places they look old or how they look old. Also the how deep they are in. If they're really deep, that might mean that they're from very long ago, because wind blows the soil, as you know, and wind blows it and blows it and blows it, and things keep overlapping each other, so that can tell how old a thing is. Towards a settled life, archaeologists have found traces of huts or houses at some sites. For instance, in Burzahum in present-day Kashmir, people built pit houses, which were dug into the ground with steps leading into them. So it was like this, and it was like that. Let me just, yep. And then they had people in there, right? As well. This may have provided shelter in cold weather. Archaeologists have also found cooking hearths. Hearths are like stoves, you can say, right? Direct fire stoves, both inside and outside of the huts, which suggests that depending on the weather, people cooked food either indoors or outdoors. Draw a pit house, as I have just done that. Stone tools may have been found from many sites as well. Many of these are different from earlier Paleolithic tools, and that is why they are called Neolithic. These include tools that were polished to give a fine cutting edge, and mortars and pestles used for grinding grain and other plant produce. Mortars and pestles are used for grinding grains even today, several thousand years later. So we still use all those tools. Not all those, but some of those tools, and we use it quite commonly. At the same time, tools of Paleolithic types continued to be made and used. And remember, some tools were also made of bones. Many kinds of earthen pots have also been found. These were sometimes decorated and were stored for storing things. And people began using pots for cooking, especially grains like rice, wheat, and lentils. Lentils are pulses, right? That now became an important part of the diet. Um, did we skip anything that I didn't cover? Yeah, no, we didn't. Okay, let's move on. I think this should be about the last part. Besides, they began weaving cloth using different kinds of materials, for example, cotton that could now be grown. Did things change everywhere all at once? Not quite. In many areas, men and women still continue to hunt and gather, and elsewhere people adopted farming and herding slowly over several thousand years. Besides, in some cases, people tried to combine these activities, doing different things during different seasons. What do you think could have been stored in this jar? They could have stored food, they could have stored um, anything they liked, maybe ornaments that they made back then, right? A closer look, living and dying in Megar. This site is located in fertile plain near Bolin Pass, which is one of the most important routes into Iran. Megar was probably the first one of the places where people learned to grow barley and wheat and rear sheep and goats for the first time in this area. It is one of the earliest villages that we know about. At this site, many animal bones were found, bones of wild animals such as deer and pig, bones of and also bones of sheep and goat were found. Other finds at Magod include remains of square or rectangular houses. Each house had four or more compartments, and then they're just telling about the house. And they also told how people actually saw um, a skeleton buried and with goat really bones, and they thought that maybe people were buried in to pay respect of them with their uh their little animal friends, or maybe the things that they wanted, or people actually believed that there might be a new world that they went to, so they buried them with food like goat. They used to eat goat back then. Yeah. Yep, so that just explains that. Cave paintings in France just shows you about how 10,000 years 20 and 10,000 years ago there were cave paintings in France. There are Laxus Grotto is also quite famous for their cave paintings, so you can have a look at that. And we have Neolithic site from Turkey, one of the most famous Neolithic sites. You can read that in your own time. It's really cool. Also, the keywords. Don't forget to look at that. They're quite important as well. And you can imagine this. Maybe you were living back at very long ago, and you see your ancestors that you never thought even were there. So yeah, you can go back and check on everything. This chapter 2 finished, easy peasy. Have a read of it. Try to remember things. Try to settle those things in your brain, and it will be really, really easy. And I know you will get really good grades. So bye bye, and I'll see you in the next chapter. Peace out.